Hey guys, it's Lacey. Today I'm going to do a story time video. This is going to be a story about my retained placenta. When I had this and I was going through it, I was on YouTube and I was like, someone else has to be going through the same thing. And there wasn't very many stories. So I want to share my story in hopes to help anyone else out there that is struggling or going through the same stuff, because it is not fun and a lot of emotional things tied into it. So before we get into the story, I know I have a lot of new subscribers, so if you're new here, welcome! I'm Lacey. I have a daughter, Mila. She's 1 year old. Make sure you like and subscribe down below, and let's get started. If you hear anyone peeping in, it's Mila. She's having a little snack right here next to me. Alright, let's get started. So before we get into the retained placenta, I wanted to give a backstory on my delivery. So I had a C-section because my daughter was breech. I tried the version before and it didn't work. Unsuccessful, unfortunately, but that's totally fine. So I went in for the C-section. Everything was normal. I'd assume normal. And yes. And I did get a shot in the middle of my C-section. They said I was losing a lot of blood. So they gave me a shot in the arm. I don't remember the name of it, but that's what it was for. After in the hospital, I delivered at Sharp Mary Birch, which is supposed to be like this great place, and I did not have such great experience, but that's okay. Everyone gets a different experience, which is good. But I was in the hospital for 3 days, no problems. They did the whole pushing on your uterus and everything, and nothing alarming, I was assuming, until I was released. And then about at my 6-week appointment, I was still bleeding, which they say by 6 weeks it should have tapered off, or just a little bit of bleeding. But I was still pretty heavily bleeding. So when I went in for the exam, she was kind of like, oh no. Kind of brought up retained placenta, kind of was like, no, probably not. It'll just be the clots, whatever. And I was like, okay. The next day, seemed like, I started hemorrhaging. And the first time I hemorrhaged, it was just randomly. And I ran to the bathroom and it was like clots about this big. So that was very scary, and I called my sister, who has had 3 C-sections, and she's like, no, that's normal, no big deal. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is normal, go with it, okay. So the second time it happened, I thought, wait a second, I don't think this is normal. So I called my sister back again. She lives in Virginia. FaceTime this time, and as it's like a massacre, I said, is this normal? And she says, no, not normal. So we ended up calling the hospital, and they said to come in. So we go in. This is still at Sharp. And I'm still about 7 weeks postpartum. And I go in, they do the exam, and I'm waiting back there forever. And they said, oh, it just looks like clots. They'll pass on their own. And then they had me this bottle with no label, no nothing, just a bottle of pills. And they said, well, you could take these and it'll pass, but it'll be very painful, or you could just let it pass on their own. So I chose, just let it pass on their own. If it's no big deal, we'll just let it pass on our own. I don't want to take these mystery pills, even though, yes, the doctor gave them to me, but they didn't even have a prescription label, no name. No, nothing. So I was like, that's okay. That should have been my first red flag with them, but that's okay. After that, I just let it pass, and I had 8 more hemorrhages come through. And I knew to go to the hospital after the last few. So I go in, and at this time we had switched to Kaiser, which was probably my best solution. So once I switched to Kaiser, at the 1st of January, I was able to go to Kaiser. So that would put me about 2 months out after having her. And when we went to Kaiser, they first thing they did was a biopsy. They did an exam and a biopsy. That night, I want to say, they called and they wanted me to come in again, scheduled a D&C. So the D&C, if you're not familiar with, is when you have to be put under anesthesia and they scrape out your uterus of anything that might have been left behind. The biopsy did come back retained placenta, which is very unfortunate. Because in C-sections, there's only a 2% chance they could forget part of the placenta, or your body doesn't expel part of it and they don't get it out. So of course I'm that 2% because that's just how my life rolls. Anywho, so we were in Kaiser. We scheduled the D&C. Mila's just a little baby at that time. And so I go into the hospital once again because I'd had multiple appointments. For ultrasounds, because you have to go to get an ultrasound through the technician and then you see the doctor. Ultrasound technician, then you see the doctor. So it was never like a quick situation. They did seem kind of urgent there at the end to get in and get things rolling. Anyhow, so we get the D&C, which wasn't as bad as I thought. At first when they said D&C, I like broke down, crying. I was like a mess because you only hear the horror stories of D&Cs and how terrible all of that is. So when they said D&C, I was so nervous, but it wasn't that bad. They just put you to sleep. You do see the little hammocks for your legs, which are very disturbing to look at, but you're already put to sleep at that point and you wake up and it's over, which is nice. So during the time of all of this, I'll go back just a little bit, I was so emotional, like more than postpartum emotional. Like someone asked me my address and I'd be crying. It's just your address, lady. Get it together. But that's just how it is. So that was another sign. I was like, oh, I know your hormones are all over the place and you're not sleeping and it's a lot of things going on, but I felt like I was like over the top, like crying at my address. Anywho, that comes and ties into retained placenta because your body thinks it's pregnant, not it's pregnant, and your hormones are even more out of whack. So that is another sign that I can look back now and be like, okay, retained placenta. Anywho, back up to where we were, D&C. So the next day you go in for another ultrasound internal, and I went in and the doctor had said, oh no. And my heart dropped. And I thought, you're kidding, right? You're totally kidding, because I just went through all of this and you didn't get it the second time the second time we're doing this. So I was just laying there and she's like, oh no, they didn't get it all. Excuse me. How much is it that we're just can't be knowing what we're doing? Anyhow, so looking up the statistics, there's only a 1% chance that they don't get it all in the D&C. Here I am, 1% chance, of course. So after that, I was so scared because you hear of all the things that could happen to your body. They had to take out your uterus. They had to do a lot of horrific things where you'll never have children again, and that's so scary to me and was so scary to me in the situation. So the next step was to do the Methergin inserted to your cervix, and the doctor did that one for me. So that first she's like, oh, do you want to do it yourself? No, lady, let's do this right the first time so we don't have to be here once again doing the same situation. Anyhow, so they did the Methergin, and she said, go home. It's going to be a not good situation. Stay by the bathroom. You can get sick. It could be cramping and more bleeding and all of the things. So I was completely prepared. It was over a weekend, which was nice. And it was nothing. No cramping, no bleeding, no nothing. Until like the third day, there was a little bit of looked like sand, but that was it. And I thought the whole time, what? Not even this is gonna work? What in the world is happening to me? And meantime, I have a little baby that I have to take care of. Luckily, my mom was there for the first half, and my husband's obviously home, or for the weekends and stuff. And I still had to take care of her, and bleeding and hemorrhaging and doctor's appointments. So in her first 2 months of life, she was at the doctor's with me like every single time. Even the DNC, my aunt came to the hospital with me, watched her at the hospital, and then we went home, obviously, together. But yeah, during the whole situation, I had to take care of my sweet little baby who wasn't sleeping very well, Mila. And still be a mom and bleed and doctors and DNC and methogen and all the things. Anywho, so we did that, and she, the weekend came, no blood, no nothing, just a little bit of sand. And there ended up going in for the ultrasound again because they go in to check again. And she's like, oh, it kind of looks like it all came out. It kind of looks, please. So she said, I think it's just your body. My uterus was still enlarged. So it was kind of shrinking back down to normal. And then the bleeding stopped. And then it was all over. Dun, da, da, da. Crazy. Crazy. So since then, there's been no bleeding, obviously. I pumped for a year with Mila. I could do a pumping story too, just because it's not very normal to do pump for a full year. Anywho, so after I pumped, just had my first cycle back, and I thought for sure, since I had the DNC, since I had even the C-section can do numbers to your uterus and all of that, I thought for sure I wasn't going to be normal or regular in that department. But sure enough, it came right after 6 weeks after I stopped pumping, and normal like any other day. So that's great because we're trying for number 2, and that means I'm not broken inside. For some reason, I totally thought DNC, C-section, methogen, all of that would kind of just screw me up down there, but it didn't. Yay. So I think that concludes it. There's nothing else I could think. I survived, and if you're going through it, you can survive. It's a lot, and it's a lot of different things, but go with your gut. And if you feel like you need to go in and your bleeding isn't normal, go in. They only can help you. So that's going to be it for this story time. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions or comments, or you've been through this before too, and we can kind of swap stories, leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Bye.